Hi, I'm Hunter Newby, and this is AFTV. I'm joined by Mike Last with WIOCC, the West Indian Ocean Cable Company.
You got it.
Yeah, and Mike, you are the Director of Business Development and International Marketing for WIOCC.
Absolutely.
And WIOCC is the largest shareholder of the EZ cable system.
That's right.
Submarine
Yep.
cable system. That's
Yep.
fantastic. So thanks for joining us here today on AFTV.
Pleasure.
I'm going to ask you a few questions, sort of prepared, and then we'll get into a little bit of Q&A about EZ.
Sure, okay.
So what's the relationship between dark fiber and backhaul, in your opinion?
For me,
Yep.
dark fiber is capacity that we would be required to invest in terms of putting equipment onto it, lighting it up, so there's a cost associated with doing that. For us, in the business that we operate in, backhaul is just about working with our shareholders who've already made that investment, so who've put equipment in there, who've lit their fiber capacity to deliver onward connectivity from our cable system, which lands on the beach in certain countries, into customers and other cities within their countries.
So backhaul is a network function over the dark fiber that you've provided
Absolutely.
or put in place.
So for us, when we look at our terrestrial connectivity, so we've got the submarine bit.
Yep.
When we look at what we do with it when it hits the land,
Yep.
for us, in theory, we could go out and invest in dark fiber, and in some of the markets in Africa, you can do that.
Yep.
But clearly, there's a cost associated with doing that. We've got shareholders who've already made that investment, who've put fiber in the ground, who've put equipment on either end of that fiber to light it up, and we take advantage of that to provide onward connectivity into those countries.
Very good. So how does wireless backhaul impact that relationship and your business?
Okay, for us, our preference when we're looking at how to connect onward is to use fiber.
Right.
And there's a lot of fiber build going on in Africa right now. There's a lot of capacity there already, and there are a lot of plans to extend that. Where we can't get fiber connectivity, then clearly we would look at other options, and one of those options would be the wireless option. For us, the preferred option would be fiber.
So maybe stated in a different way, how does the proliferation of mobile service to handsets impact the need for backhaul services over your fiber between African nations?
For us, that's where a significant growth is taking place. Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing now is that it's much easier for service providers and for operators in the countries where we operate to provide high-speed services to mobile devices, to laptops, whatever. The fact that capability is now available means that more and more people are starting to connect to it, which is driving traffic, which is driving requirements to build capacity on our systems. And it's kind of it works both ways.
It's interesting, isn't it?
But as there's more traffic,
it kind of jumps ahead and then it pulls itself up.
So the fact that it becomes cheaper means more people connect, which means there's more traffic, which means there's more people wanting capacity.
Because the network's there, people use it, and because they use it, you need more network.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I think that's something that people outside of Africa don't necessarily recognize. Those of us who live in the Western world know that we do that kind of stuff, and they don't actually realize that certainly in some aspects, in some areas, Africa's ahead of where we are. If you look at what's happening with some of the mobile applications.
I totally agree.
Mobile banking is something we don't do in the UK. Some of us would love to be able to do it, but we don't have that capability. In parts of Africa, that's a growing
it's the way of life now.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't want to diverge too much because I'm fascinated by this, but at the same time, and we can get into it in a second, but that in and of itself, the function of mobility for a lot of people that had no prior communications capability whatsoever, and the mobility with banking built into it is almost the first app that drives them to get the mobile device. Exactly. Not even full duplex calls. It's just to be able to be banked. And that's not just one particular pocket. That's the continent, particularly the lower portion of the continent. Now it's just booming with mobile banking.
But I think the other aspect that, again, people outside of Africa don't realize is we're very, very used to fixed line connectivity. We're very used to the idea that we're connected to a network.
It's a vestige of the past. It's the legacy incumbent. It's the protected interests that they didn't want that make that change. Where you're looking at a lot of countries now on the continent that have no historical reference. So they can have mobile infrastructure built, and that's the infrastructure.
Well, I think there's two elements to it. One is kind of the protectionist element.
Yep.
The reality, I live in the UK. In the UK, British Telecom built a network.
Yeah.
British Telecom connected to everybody. So there's a copper network there that everybody is used to connecting to.
Right.
Where we operate, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, the fixed line network is minimal.
It's nothing.
So you just don't have the ability
Right.
to do the things that we take for granted. Now that you've
Right.
got this mobile connectivity, things like Wi-Fi and WiMAX, making it not just the ability to make phone calls and send messages, but actually to do some really clever stuff and some really interesting stuff is changing the dynamics.
But it's possible that mobile's threat to fixed line in the other countries that have had it for a long period of time is less significant than the threat to mobile banking is to the existing banking infrastructure.
That's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, that's a divergence right there.
But absolutely,
So that's something that could happen.
I think if you look in Kenya, there's more people who've got mobile banking accounts than have bank accounts.
That's right, clearly.
Yeah.
So, back on point, what role does Ethernet play in the present and future in Africa?
Right now, I think if you look at again the markets that we serve, so down the eastern side of Africa, Ethernet right now is not a big player.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality right now. Even though most of the traffic that's being generated is IP based,
Really? Yeah.
Ethernet infrastructure is only starting to be developed.
Why is that? Equipment vendors got a boatload of SDH they want to dump. I mean, what is it?
That's a good question, and you'd probably, to be honest, you'd probably need to talk to our shareholders,
Right.
and some of the other operators.
They're trying to move
in
some
that
legacy
part of the
product.
world.
They got to get it out of the warehouses.
I don't know. Certainly, what we've seen is that when we go out and talk to our shareholders and to potential customers about how they want to connect to us, the requirement right now is SDH. There's a recognition that Ethernet may be the way to go forward, and that's something that we're looking at. But right now, what they're used to, and what they want from us, is SDH connectivity, and that's the way that their networks are set up. It's the way that
Is that a vestige of the submarine system network being SDH?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the other way around. I think the requirement right now is to connect
to the existing infrastructure, which is SDH.
To connect to the existing infrastructure, which is SDH. So had we gone out there and put a whole lot of Ethernet equipment into our landing stations, well, actually, there's nothing to connect it to right now.
Right.
I think that'll change.
Yeah.
I think when you start to look at some of the mature markets, it's already starting to change.
Right.
So that's something that clearly we need to track. We need to take account of as we're looking at how we move this stuff forward.
Yeah.
If you look at other markets, clearly it's different. And
yeah,
Ethernet
Europe
is the technology.
U.S., North America, Asia.
Yeah.
Largely.
Now again, it's going to change.
Yeah. It's just curious to me to know that the investment was made in an infrastructure technology that's dated, and it's a new system.
In terms of our submarine cable system, or
the SDH
the
component?
terrestrial? Okay.
Not the Ethernet. I'm thinking more along the lines of DWDM transport, SDH interface to a legacy, like you said, network that's in a country like Tanzania that doesn't have much of a PSTN.
Sure.
So why not just start out of the gate with Ethernet for IP interfaces? Just a thought. That's not my market, it's yours. I was just curious. Because the rest of the world being Ethernet-based for IP, the ability to provision a VLAN from South America, Asia, Europe, North America, all the way to Nairobi or wherever, without having to make that change, makes it that much more seamless.
Absolutely.
It's just an observation.
I think it'll come.
Yeah.
I think the reality is the market's very new. And actually all of this stuff is very, very new to our customers and to our shareholders. The whole submarine thing is
that's a good point.
None of it's been there before. So when we go out and talk to people, the reality is you go to some of these markets and you talk to people about an IRU, and an IRU is something they don't understand.
Right.
The difference between leased capacity and effectively a long-term ownership of capacity is not a distinction that they've ever had to know about before.
It's in other words, what you're saying is it's too much of a learning curve, too much of a jump.
It's a big jump, and it's a jump people are making. But it's only with that knowledge and that understanding and confidence in the technology, that you can start to look at some of these future requirements. And I think it'll come.
Sure. It's good enough to make that first step.
Yeah.
So then, I guess this leads to the last question, and I've asked several people as it relates to the infrastructure in the United States in terms of
Yep.
physical infrastructure, is it there to support Ethernet and transport and backhaul requirements? But it's not necessarily your point. So
Sure.
is the in-country, in-continent infrastructure there today in Africa, not any particular country, but in general, to support all of the new applications, whether they're transit or wireless or whatnot? And I know part of this, too, is that Africa is going through a massive transformation.
Yep.
So it's a leading question to say, is it there? Because we could say, well, no, but yes, because it's being done.
Yeah.
So what's your viewpoint? Because obviously the easy cable system being built is monumental
Yep.
for the east coast of Africa, which has historically not had really anything to speak of.
Yep.
So that in and of itself is a vote of confidence. Now,
Yep.
before I go on and answer my own question too much longer, how do you feel about the current state of the physical infrastructure in Africa?
No, but yes, but it's happening.
Right, exactly, exactly. No, but yes, but it's happening.
You know, the reality
Fantastic.
is, you know, right now, as you say, in pretty much all the markets that we operate in, there's a huge transformation.
Yeah.
And that transformation is actually coming from a whole lot of different directions.
Yeah.
So one of the directions is that there's money coming into the continent.
Mm-hmm.
So funding,
Yep.
you know,
World
is less
Bank,
of an issue than
IMF,
it's
and,
been in the
and
past.
private investment.
So money is available, which is different to a lot of markets.
Yep.
So in Africa, there is money. There's money to make investment, and people are making that investment. And they're making that investment in, as you said, a lot of the new technologies.
Yep.
So what you're seeing is that legacy infrastructure, which wasn't a hugely wide infrastructure anyway,
Right.
is being superseded by people going out and putting in fiber,
Right.
you know, considering Ethernet, certainly looking at Wi-Fi, implementing Wi-Fi, you know, WiMAX networks. So that investment is going in. The other thing that's happening and that's changing is exactly what we do, which is the submarine capacity
Right.
coming into the continent. There's something like 14. I think it's actually more than 14 terabits per second of capacity going into Africa within the next 2 years.
That's incredible.
You know, which makes, you know, I don't know off the top of my head what the capacity is transatlantic at the moment. I suspect that 14 terabits per second is actually more than you've got transatlantic today.
Pretty close.
Which is,
Yeah.
you know,
if you considered all the unused fibers and the capability for upgrade,
yeah, which
That's a lot.
which is incredible. So, you know, that's going to fundamentally change the dynamics of what's happening. The way in which we're starting to sell that capacity, again, will fundamentally change the way that things happen.
Yep.
We're not saying to people, you've got to go out and invest a huge pile of money in a huge amount of capacity and tie it up for 25 years.
Right.
What we're saying is
You
you
can
can come
lease
to us and you can take a 2 meg connection,
Right.
and you can take it for a month if you want.
Right.
And if you want it for 2 months, you can take it for 2 months. If you want it for a year, you can take it for a year. And if you don't want 2 meg, but you want a DS3 or you want an STM1 or an STM4 or a wavelength or multiple wavelengths, we can do all of that. That's never been there before.
Right.
And that, to me, that's from the supply side, that's the most interesting thing that's happening. The most exciting thing that's happening is you're not asking people to have to put together a massive business case for a long-term commitment for capacity that they may never sell. What we're saying is just pay as you grow.
And that actually
take a bit more, take a bit more, take a bit more.
The product stimulates demand.
And that's what's happening.
Right.
So our product stimulates demand.
And demand comes and grows.
The Wi-Fi product stimulates demand. As soon as you give people access to all of that content that sits out there in the internet
feeds
right
on
now.
itself.
And if you look at what's happened with mobile growth in sub-Saharan Africa, nobody predicted it. Nobody got within an order of magnitude of what that would look like.
Right.
And that's in an environment where actually somebody had to go out and create the applications that were going to drive the traffic.
Right.
You look at the internet, and it's all there. YouTube's there.
It's there.
Google's there.
Just connect, it's there.
Facebook's there.
Yeah.
You know, they're all there. Give somebody the connection.
Right. That's great.
And it's there. So
it's big.
It's all happening.
Yeah.
It's all coming together, and all of the different things, all the different elements are now coming together. Pricing's coming down. Accessibility is going up. Speeds are going up. The whole thing's, it's exciting.
It's
an exciting
fantastic
place to be.
So last question, 30 seconds. World Cup is coming up.
Yep.
I'm, fascinated by World Cup in South Africa. How has that had an impact, if at all, on your cable system and the timing of its turn up?
For us, 18 months ago, when we looked at, the milestones, the project plan for this, we said, we will not be in a position to support World Cup traffic in time to do that. So since we started looking at this in terms of mapping out the future, we knew that July was going to be what we were aiming at. And the reality is, you could have pulled it forward a little bit, but then you might have been in a position where everything's not as it needs to be. And
right.
The worst scenario for us would have been to push everything
and not
to
deliver.
get in before the World Cup, and then because you haven't tested it fully, or you haven't installed it correctly, or whatever, you have a problem. So for us, we've said for the last 18 months, the World Cup is not going to be on our network.
Right.
What we want is that when we launch what it is we launch, it's going to be there and it's going to be ready, and as soon as we get customer traffic on it, it's going to be up and live and working.
That's very prudent.
So that's been our priority.
You'll probably have a big suite there, though, right? The World Cup, the match.
It'd be nice to think so.
Yeah, we can work on that. Listen, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today here on AFTV, and hopefully we can see each other again next year and have an update on how everything went.
I'll look forward to that. I think there'll be a lot to talk about this time next year.
Thank you.
All right, pleasure.
Bye.